Ole Miss simply must land Caleb Cunningham if they want to take the next step.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, I'm Stephen Willis, a former staff member at Ole Miss and a 10-year veteran member of the national media with Yahoo Sports. Today on the show, we talk about Caleb Cunningham taking an impromptu visit to Ole Miss on Tuesday and why this player is so important for what Ole Miss football can become. We look at the parade of four-star prospects that are supposed to be on campus this weekend, and we change the subject to talk a little bit about ESPN actually giving Lane Kiffin some bulletin board material to use. This is the Locked On Ole Miss Podcast, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're free and available in all the podcast apps and on YouTube. So thank you for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day, and a special hello to the everydayers who make the show what it is. July 2nd at 7 p.m. Central Time, you can join us at Walk-Ons in Ridgeland, Mississippi for a meet and greet. It's sure to be a ton of fun, and it's a way for the Loom community to grow as a unit as we try to get even more and more, I don't know, effective, important. I don't know what the word is there, but it's going to be fun either way. Anyway, the Rebel Road Trip is sponsored by Dead Soxy, and it will be in Corinth, Mississippi on June 13th at 6 Central Time at the Crossroads Arena. That's in Corinth, Mississippi. And there's still time to join also the Grove Collective and help Ole Miss football be elite. You can go to thegrovecollective.com and join today. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. So Caleb Cunningham had a visit to the Auburn Tigers over the weekend, and by all accounts, it went really well. To the point where everybody was saying Auburn was the number one team and all of that stuff. And that may very well be true. I'm not disputing that at all. But it is at least telling that as soon as such a great visit happened, an impromptu visit to Ole Miss on June 4th happened. Now, Caleb Cunningham is the type of player that Ole Miss simply just must land. If you want to talk about must-get players, they need to get him and to take every avenue to make that happen. Caleb Cunningham is a generational type wide receiver. Whenever you look at the receivers that have come out of the state of Mississippi over the last few years, it's Aiden Williams and a bunch of really good receivers, but not elite receivers. Caleb Cunningham would probably be more highly rated than Aiden Williams coming out as far as ability and talent. He plays at Choctaw County in formerly Ackerman, Mississippi. He's basically a suburb of Starkville, if you want to look at it that way. But it looks like he's going to end up at somewhere else than Mississippi State, although a lot of people think State has at least a location chance to land this prospect. But Auburn made an impression on him week one. He's visiting or did visit Ole Miss on Tuesday of this week. This is going to be a 6-month fight for his services. He's not a slam dunk. Ole Miss does have as good a chance as just about anybody to land this player, but we'll see how it goes. It might just be a situation due to his location that he isn't an Ole Miss guy and he could not get over that hump. That is something that is absolutely possible to happen. But Caleb Cunningham going to Ole Miss so many times, that is at the very least telling. And it lets me know that Ole Miss has a real shot to land this prospect. Now, Ole Miss has a Kylan Deere. They've already gotten a commitment from a Kylan Deere who is probably, according to Brian Smith, the best running back in the entire country. They have a commitment from Jerome Miles, a wide receiver from Corner Canyon. He is a 5-star on one of these services. He's like, it's up and down. We talked to Brian Smith. He said there's just no football scouts in Utah, so there's a lot of variance out there. But his 100 and 200 meter time mixed with his high school rating is in the way he moves. You've seen his highlight videos on here. You can see the talent that exists with Jerome Miles. He is currently committed to play in the All-American Bowl in San Antonio. That's the former Army game. So those are the two main players that Ole Miss is going after in this class. Now, the next two main players that Ole Miss is going to desperately try to land is Notre Dame commitment Deuce Knight, which Ole Miss is in a very good space to get him with 6 months to go. Because remember, at this point on June 5th, you're still at about 5-6 months away from signing day. So there's a lot of water that is going to flow under the bridge. Deuce Knight is a big-time prospect that Ole Miss is going to put a ton of effort into getting on campus and getting into their signing class. And the other one is Caleb Cunningham, who is probably the top remaining prospect that Ole Miss has a chance to land in this signing class. I do think Ole Miss's high school signing class is going to end up somewhere between 15 and 20 prospects. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there are so many one-and-dones transferring into Ole Miss for this season. Ole Miss has a lot of spots to fill for next season. It could be argued as somewhere in the 40 to 50 prospect range that Ole Miss is going to have to turn over next season. And because of that, the high school class is going to be larger than normal, and the transfer portal class is going to be about the same. And we'll see how it turns out. Caleb Cunningham, he's an elite wide receiver. Heck, Choctaw County is getting a new football stadium built for them, and that might as well be the new football stadium that Caleb Cunningham built, because scouts and college coaches and things like that, they're all going to be going through Ackerman to see this young man this fall. Really, really good football player. Now, I mentioned earlier that Ole Miss must land this player, and everybody's going to say, why are you saying that? Ole Miss has a top 5 level team this year. What does a must high school get mean? What are you talking about? Well, Ole Miss is in a situation similar to the way Clemson was in, I guess, 2014, 2015, right when it was starting for Clemson. When they had Deshawn Watson at quarterback, they had really good players and they had talented players, but they didn't have that elite player that was the next generation, the Trevor Lawrences, the Travis Etiennes. Those players on the field, they came after the fact. They came in the main, you're trying to win a national championship, which Clemson was trying to do with Deshaun Watson, but they were the ones that honestly came because of the rise that initially happened. Clemson became a force for 5, 6, 7 years, and then, once the game changed a little bit, so did they. But Ole Miss is in a similar type situation. This year, they are going to try and win it all. They are. I mean, there's no sense running away from saying that. And Ole Miss is in a position to where if you want to sustain this, keep this going, to make sure you're not Space Hog or Hanson or some other one-hit wonder, you need to recruit at an extremely high level, whether through the transfer portal or through high school recruiting. The players that are coming through Mississippi in this 2025 cycle are elite enough, are good enough to where Ole Miss can kind of have a little bit of staying power moving into the future. Now, we don't know what the transfer portal holds, and we don't know any stuff like that. So we're not going to play the game of like looking way down the road. But this would give Ole Miss a chance for that staying power with Deuce Knight as the quarterback, or Austin Simmons if he ends up being the guy. And then you have a Kylan Deere and Caleb Cunningham and Jerome Miles, a lot of talented player, Hunter Bradley, I think, at tight end. There's a lot of high school skill position talent that Lane Kiffin is recruiting. And it is for that staying power. I talked about this the other day, that people that are so worried about Lane Kiffin and the last dance, they probably shouldn't, because there's actions that are happening to where he is pretty constantly building for the future at a different level than he was in 2020 and 2021. I'm not saying that he is here forever. Heck, he could be gone as soon as the playoffs over, for all I know. He could be in the NFL. But talking about behavior and what he does, it's different this year than it was 3 years ago at Ole Miss. And part of that could be the fact that Ole Miss football is probably progressing to a point to where they're right on the cusp of being something special and different. And Lane Kiffin, who part of his recruiting tells people, hey, why don't you come to Ole Miss where you get to do it first, then go somewhere else where somebody else has done it before. I think Lane Kiffin is drawn by the fact that he can see what doing it first looks like for him. And he knows how much adulation he can get from the national media if for some reason he was able to win one at Ole Miss. He knows that if he could turn Ole Miss into a power in football, all of a sudden he's going to get more credit because of where Ole Miss is coming from than, say, Nick Saban did at Alabama, than, say, Bobby Bowden did at Florida State or Steve Spurrier at Florida or any of those. Ole Miss making that turn, turning that corner into a Clemson-type national power will help Lane Kiffin. And Caleb Cunningham is kind of instrumental to growing to that level. I mean, there's a chance Jerome Miles, Caleb Cunningham, Deuce Knight, a Kylan Deere, all of those guys could be on the field for still skill positions for Ole Miss at the same time. And that is something that makes Ole Miss function a little bit differently. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen of the day. Caleb Cunningham visiting this week was huge, but Ole Miss is getting ready for a parade of 4 stars this weekend, and we let you know all about it. You know, Game Time is the place to get your NBA Finals tickets, and they have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and the lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. They do have views from every seat in the venue, even in Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. If you're looking at trying to get into the Georgia game or some other game that's going to be a hard sellout, you can get a view of exactly what that would look like. They have the lowest price guarantee, the events cancellation protection, job loss protection, basically all the stuff you could ever want in customer service, they do. They take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day and you have to turn down the volume with all of that screaming and shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinion, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Now, Ole Miss is getting ready for a parade of 4 stars, essentially, on Ole Miss's campus this weekend. I think 4 or 5 official visitors are planned as of this point. Now, it all is subject to change, but these are some players that it looks like Ole Miss is trying to get on campus. And it starts and stops kind of with Mario Nash. Mario Nash is a major type left tackle that is being produced in the state of Mississippi. He was the offensive tackle MVP of the Under Armour Combine in Atlanta, Georgia. He is out of Kemper County. He is from DeKalb, Mississippi. 6'4.5", 270 pounds right now, so he does have a little bit of growing to do. He is ranked in the secondary top 250, 247, like that, on 247 Sports and Rivals. He's ranked 170 on Rivals, 236 on 247 Sports. He's rated only as a 3-star on 3, and is a 3-star on ESPN as well. Big time prospect, though. And I had Brian Smith on the show a couple of weeks back, and we'll talk this weekend about Mario Nash. Ole Miss football and him, they kind of fit each other, what they need. Mario Nash has a chance. I'm not saying Laramie Tunsil level, but he has a chance to be that athletic at the offensive tackle position. And it could be in an age of road graders on Ole Miss's offensive line. He could be the one that is doing the athleticism on top of the road grading. And him being the MVP of the Under Armour Combine in Atlanta is a big deal. Now, I've seen his social. He's had Florida State on there a couple times. I think the RPMs on three have him viewed at Mississippi State. He's another one that is from that area. But I genuinely think that Ole Miss is going to have a chance. I do not think it's this commitment situation for this weekend. So nobody expecting a commitment. But if you look at this offensive lineman and what he can do and how he could help Ole Miss, and we talked last segment about how important this season is, this recruiting class is for extending what could be a special 2024 college football playoff run. Mario Nash is pretty instrumental for that as well. It's not at the point where must get Mario and Nash. It's not like a Caleb Cunningham. But it would help if Ole Miss would get a player like Mario Nash. I really like Mario Nash. We're going to talk with Brian Smith over the weekend about that. Now, he isn't the only official visitor scheduled for this weekend. Ole Miss has Carson Lawrence. He is a safety from McAllen in Chattanooga. 6'2", 185. He's a Vanderbilt commit. Vandy has a guy that on three has it as the 163rd player in the country and as a 4-star. So good for the doors. And if you look at the consensus ranking, he's a top 300 player. He is a good football player. You see some safeties that Pete Golding is now recruiting to go with his mix of corners in that room as well. That's pretty interesting. Jalen Morgan, another player out of Tennessee. He's out of Murfreesboro and Rockville. He's another safety, 5'11 and a half, 185 pounds. He's pretty much a consensus 4-star. On three has him as a 3-star, but 247 ESPN and Rivals has him as a 4-star, and he is consensus number 250 in the country. Then you have DeJarian Miller from East St. Louis, Illinois, Cardinal Ritter College Prep School, 4-star on Rivals, ranked 171 in the country, nationally consensus 401, a 3-star player. Another wide receiver that Ole Miss is looking at. Now we have to figure out tiers of where these guys land, because I'm going to show you this next guy, and he is potentially fairly special, and he's from my neck of the woods. Anytime Ole Miss recruits a player from this 2-hour area, my ears perk up. But if you look at his height, DeJarian Miller is 6'3", 190. He has a chance to grow a little bit, be that big wide receiver that Ole Miss has made a living off of after the last couple of years. And the other one is Winston Watkins. He is decommitted, I think, from Texas A&M. I have not researched that enough. He is a 5'9" and a half, 170-pound wide receiver that is rated as a 5-star, the number 17 player in the entire country by Rivals.com. Inside the ESPN top 300 at 179, a 4-star on 24/7 Sports, and on three, of course, this is a trend, has him as a 3-star. Consensus number 177 in the country, 4-star player. This guy has a little Elijah Moore in his game. So if you want to know how Ole Miss would use that, at 5'9" and a half, 175 pounds, I guarantee you we're gonna put video up of him this week, okay, and do that. But I guarantee you he's quicker than a hiccup. You can't catch him in a phone booth. All of that stuff to where a primo slot type wide receiver is potentially on the market for Ole Miss. Winston Watkins Jr., like I said, he decommitted. Now he's looking at his next options, and Ole Miss is getting a visit. There is a legit chance, like at the same level of Ole Miss winning the national title this year, that Ole Miss gets 3 players that are 5-stars in a certain service. They're at least a 5-star in one service in Caleb Cunningham, Jerome Miles, and Winston Watkins. Those would be big gets at the wide receiver position. And Lane Kiffin, wide receiver, a lot of people don't know, wide receiver is kind of his baby. He was a wide receiver coach. He cut his teeth on that at USC coming up. Sarkisian was the quarterback coach. Norm Chow was the offensive coordinator. Sarkisian and Kiffin kind of tag teamed it at USC. After Norm Chow left what he was doing, I think he became the head coach at Hawaii. But Lane Kiffin then went to Alabama as the offensive coordinator, and all of a sudden you have like Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy and Jalen Waddle and just wide receiver after wide receiver after wide receiver, because Lane Kiffin has a type when it comes to those dominant positions. And he is working on building something really similar for Ole Miss. And we talked in the first segment about how this recruiting class is going to go a long way for sustainability for Ole Miss football. Yes, 2024, Ole Miss has a big chance to do very big things in college football. Nobody is doubting that. But for that to go on, Ole Miss has to be not necessarily creative, because Austin Simmons and Walker Howard, they've got quarterback under control. They just need the reps. The running back position, if you get in a Kylan Deere, the wide receivers potentially could be taken over, and recruiting somebody like a Deuce Knight. You can see how in the recruiting game, Lane Kiffin is working to build high-level sustainability in this Ole Miss roster. I'm not saying recruiting is the end-all, be-all or anything like that. I'm just saying these are some options that we're working, and if they work out for Ole Miss, will put you in a position where you want Ole Miss to be, honestly. Anyway, thanks again for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. Ever since the final gun of the Ole Miss Penn State game, everybody has been doing their rat poison best talking about Ole Miss. Well, finally, Ole Miss has some bulletin board to fight back, and they can use. Stick around. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV Channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV Channels app. Be part of history. So rat poison, that's a fun joke. Everybody that's Ole Miss fans, because of the Lane Kiffin thing, they like to come on and talk about rat poison. Anytime you say something good about Ole Miss's team, it's rat poison this or rat poison that. Heck, I even got rat poisoned by Lane Kiffin for something that I said. And let's face it, he's not wrong, but I am just saying what I want to say and having fun with it, enjoying this football season. That is my right. That is my job. But I do understand Lane Kiffin has to keep 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds balanced and centered, and it would help to have an avenue to do that, and his avenue to do that is rat poison, which he got from Nick Saban. But everybody has that. If you look at every single poll that has come out, Ole Miss is either 5th or 6th. They're pretty consistent about that. And it's not rat poison anymore. It's just true. The expectations are real. And how do you combat that? How do you get ready to deal with not having this? Because I've talked on this show that one of the major things for Lane Kiffin this season is going to be able to take a bunch of guys that are not used to these expectations and making them successful regardless. Well, for the first time, Lane Kiffin got some manna from heaven, and that is the ESPN FPI released their top 25 preseason. And it is, so good. Chef's kiss. If you look at it, Georgia number 1, yes, that's fine. Oregon 2, Texas, everything's fine in that top 10 that you see, all of a sudden, except randomly Penn State's at 6. And then you look down and it's like, wait, where's Ole Miss? Ole Miss is usually very high on this list. Oh, there they are, number 16. So according to ESPN's predictive method, Ole Miss is ranked less than Texas A&M, who they beat a year ago, LSU, who they beat a year ago, and Penn State, who they beat a year ago. Even though they have improvement on their team and brought back most of their roster when LSU and A&M and Penn State did not, those teams are ranked higher than Ole Miss. Why? What's going on there? And like I said, this is a disrespect thing. This is a disrespect thing. I do think that in these computer programs, there is some kind of sign or whatever going on. There's some kind of a letter that's in their algorithm that denotes this team is a good team and this team is traditionally not a good team. And if you are not on that good team list, they're not going to put you in the top 10 because this is a predictive measure. And computers trying to predict what's going on. Look at the FBI after the first the RPI after the first weekend of the baseball season, before all the data gets in there. Not much of a predictive measure. Ole Miss might be 379 in the country or ranked number 1 in the country or anywhere in between. And they wouldn't be a true indicator of where Ole Miss is going to end up because the data has to be built over time to build up that predictive mechanism. So much of the FPI, okay, the FPI is about what happened previously and things that you really put expected values on. And they try to find that so it works and it's something to talk about, whatever. It's fine. But I can guarantee you when Ole Miss reports to practice, heck, it might be happening right now, that there is a printout of the FPI posted in every single locker on Ole Miss's roster. Lane Kiffin's got that manna for heaven. He's got that yummy rat poison, as Nick Saban called it. Whenever people want to say you can't do something, and giving a really super talented team the ability to use that as a weapon so you're not completely on the defensive against, hey, this team is the best team in college football. You're not having to defend against that the entire year. Now you can say, hey, these guys let us down. Think about the Georgia National Championship game 2 years ago, to where after the game was over, the player was interviewing, talking to somebody in the press, and it's like, everybody thought we would win 6 or 7 games this year. Even though Georgia was the consensus number 1 player in the number 1 team in the country, and everybody knew that they were going to be really good. And everybody heard that and just kind of rolled his eyes like, what has Kirby been telling these guys? What is Kirby making them believe? And that's true. Kirby had to make him believe that nobody believed that Georgia could win the national championship, even though I think Georgia was a horn-to-horn number 1 team, and everybody predicted them to win all their games. Kirby still made that player believe that nobody thought that they could do it. They were the underdogs inside their own building. And the result was putting 70 points on TCU in the national championship game, looking like a Super Bowl from 1985. That is what Georgia was able to do. Well, Lane Kiffin now gets to do that with something he can point at, to where at the end of the year, if Ole Miss wins a national title, if all of the bets pay off and Ole Miss wins and somebody says, hey, everybody thought we could only win 7 games, and everybody's going to start to roll their eyes, and now they're going to remember that this happened. That, yeah, there were some people that did kind of do this, didn't they? And Ole Miss is be the story of college football. Remember, though, in this season, so much can happen in a football season. The expectations and the talent is all there. It's the most talented football team in my lifetime. It's not particularly close. You have a top 5 quarterback, top 5 wide receiver, top 5 tight end, top 5 defensive end, top 5 defensive tackle in the country, period. This is a talented football team. But football seasons can be weird. And part of me wonders if the FBI doing this isn't just the ESPN trying to protect themselves in case football season gets weird, so they can say, hey, see, I told you we were right. Cool, huh? Numbers, right? Wow. That type of stuff. So we'll see what's going on. But Lane Kiffin has got the yummy rat poison he has been craving for about 7 months, and I hope he uses this well. This is a pretty big deal. Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen. We have the most perspectives surrounding Ole Miss sports, and one of the many reasons why we are the number 1 Ole Miss podcast, and thank you for that. This week's top 5 topic is top 5 wide receivers in Ole Miss football history. Also, a one sheet is available on our Twitter page for people that are looking at advertising opportunities with the program. So if you're interested in that, you can hit that up. That's on the LOOLEMISS at on Twitter. So it's LO Ole Miss, essentially. Look up that. You'll have the information of basically our one sheet for advertising. But for your second listen, checked out the Locked On Sports Today. It's here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows that cover every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available in the free Fire TV Channels app. For those of you on YouTube, though, we are going to send you there right now. Hotty toddy, everyone.